Hello, readers and loungers. Welcome to Readers Lounge Live. My name is Scott with the Reader Engagement Department. I'm joined by Andrew, who is one of our web developers, and Angie, also from the Readers Engagement Department. Our first section, as always, is our Librarian's Picks, where you can see what we're currently reading or currently loving. And I'm going to start with Angie, who told us a few episodes ago about a book called There's Always This Year by Hanif Abdurraqib. She will fix that if I was wrong. But she got to see him speak live, and I wanted to hear a little bit about that, and then tell us about your first pick.
Sure. So the author event, I've been to lots and lots of author events throughout my time as a reader, many of the Story Center speaker series as well, and it's one of my probably all-time favorite author events I went to. It was really wonderful. He read a little bit from the scene where Kenny Gregory, former Columbus, Ohio, and University of Kansas basketball star, competes in the McDonald's All-America Dunk Contest. And I remember watching that live, and I was very excited for Mr. Gregory to arrive on campus. And he's an excellent reader of his work. The audiobook, he reads his own book as well, is really great. But then there was a very wide-ranging Q&A talking about everything from Disney villains to the Minnesota Timberwolves all-time starting five, to his relationship to his older work. It was just a really wonderful event. So yeah, I highly recommend the book as well if you want a taste of that experience. But another book that I recommend is one that I think will be especially great for book groups, because I want everyone I know to read this book so I can talk about it with someone, is The Other Valley by Scott Alexander Howard. And this one is about a teenager named Odile who lives in this village with heavily guarded borders. And there is a village to the west that is the same village with the same people 20 years in the past. And then to the east is another village with the same people 20 years in the future. And so the borders are guarded to keep time interference from happening. And so Odile is applying to be a member of the council, which allows people to visit between the villages, primarily like if, say, a loved one has died, and then they can go see them in the past. But this council has to weigh the grief that they might be experiencing with their desire to change the outcome and the danger that that might possess. And so Odile sees something that she shouldn't, and both when she's a teenager and in the second half of the book she's an adult. And in both cases you have to figure out what she's going to do with that information and what are the consequences of her choice. So I just really love the world of this novel and all the ethical dilemmas that it posed. I don't know what I would have done if I was in Odile's situation. So I just loved how thought-provoking. I think anyone who loves like Kazuo Ishiguro would really like this one, again, as well as book groups, because I think there's so much in there to talk about.
Awesome. Yeah, I loved There's Always This Year after your suggestion. Kenny Gregory just seems like he was a great guy. And then I loved learning about the Michigan Fab Five, is that right? So that was really fun. It's not just about basketball though, so it's a great read to pick up. Andrew, what have you been reading?
You know, there's a book I read actually a couple summers ago that I am really excited for the sequel that comes out this year, and that would be The Guncle by Stephen Rowley. And the sequel comes out this summer, and it's The Guncle Abroad, also by Stephen Rowley. And it's a sort of funny, actually it's funny, but also a little bit sweet and sad, because it's a man whose sister has passed away, and so he unexpectedly ends up with two kids and some of the adventures they have, as well as the grief that they're dealing with. And it's just a book that I really enjoyed, and I can't wait to read the next one.
Awesome. So I chose a horror title. Summer is a great time to read horror. You got lots of sleepaway camp murderers and slashers going on. This one does not take place during the summer, although close. So it's called The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. It is a current Gateway nominee for 9th through 12th graders in the state of Missouri. And it's a Carrie-inspired novel about a biracial girl going to the town's first integrated prom. in Georgia. It's told through different perspectives, including a podcast that is trying to figure out what happened the night of the prom. In case you don't know what happens in Carrie, there is a lot of fire in a gym, and people don't survive that. So Maddie, the main character, has telekinesis, and things go wrong. It's amazingly gruesome, which I really liked. I'm a huge horror fan, and books don't always get the gore right. This one did, and emotionally intense because of the things that it's dealing with, the integrated prom. I recommend listening to the audiobook because it features a full cast. Angie, what else do you got for us?
Well, another one that I read recently, I've been reading a lot of crime books of various kinds for a program that I've been doing, and I think one is one you might have read too. I think I remember you talking about Better the Blood by Michael Bennett. I really like this one because it's set in New Zealand, and it's the first book in a series, the Hunter Westerman thrillers. And the crime in this one, the killer is kind of taunting Hannah with some clues. All of the killings are inspired by this historic photograph of a Maori elder and being hung. And so the killer is now targeting the descendants in that photograph because of the Maori term utu, which is kind of a rebalancing of things, a way to rebalance things. And so this is kind of a complicated case for Hannah because she herself is Maori, and as a rookie cop, she was involved in an incident where there was a lands rights demonstration, and as a cop, she was sent to help clear that out, and so she has some complicated feelings about her role in that as well. She's a very flawed but interesting and complicated character. It was very suspenseful, very propulsive. I was always wondering what was going to happen next. And I also really like the insight into Maori history and culture as well, which is something that I didn't really know a whole lot about.
Sure. It's great. If you like books like Seven, I think it'd be or movies like Seven, I think it'd be a great book to pick up. Very adrenaline-filled, page-turning. Yeah. Andrew, what else have you been reading?
You know, this one actually isn't a book, but it's a movie that I watched because something else I love about summer is summer romances. And so this one was Anyone But You, which came out, I believe, in theaters in December or so. But it's very much takes place in warm weather, warm climate. I don't know if they actually specify what time of year it is, but it feels summery. And it is an R-rated rom-com based on the play Much Ado About Nothing, which is one of my favorite Shakespearean plays, one of his comedies. And I've seen numerous adaptations. And so it's nice to see another modern adaptation of Shakespeare. You know, if 10 Things I Hate About You or She's the Man, and some of those great ones. So I'm hoping that this one brings back more good rom-coms and hopefully more Shakespeare adaptations, because you can never have enough Shakespeare adaptations.
I think it depends on who you ask. So I'm going to stick with the horror theme and talk about the third in a trilogy, but I'll talk about the trilogy as a whole. Angel of Indian Lake, which is the third book in the Indian Lake trilogy. It came out March of 2024. It's written by Stephen Graham Jones, who wrote one of my favorite horror novels called The Only Good Indians, which you should definitely check out. But I love this series. It's about a young adult named Jade Daniels who is obsessed with slashers. Same. And so I really connected with this character. There's lots of pop culture references, but this one allows us to finally meet the Lake Witch, Stacey Graves, or do we? And it's just these fun, fast-paced books in this town of Proof Rock, Idaho that seems to be cursed because every 4 years someone comes and does a bit of a killing spree. So lots of fun slasher kills. And if you're into horror movies, it's a great place to get a list of horror movies to watch because Jade, like I said, is obsessed, and she mentions hundreds, it seems like, throughout the series. So that is the Indian Lake trilogy by Stephen Graham Jones.
I also really love The Only Good Indians, and so I really need to pick up that trilogy, especially now that it's completed and I can read all 3 books.
Yeah, you don't have to wait.
Yes.
The audiobooks are also good because they feature a full cast, so I would highly recommend picking them up. The first one might not, but the second 2 do. Angie, do you have a third book for us?
Well, how about a trio of books
Of course.
by the same author? So I'm very excited for the Lit Up Festival that's coming September 21st. It's kind of a all-day event, an annual event that MCPL does for teens around reading and writing. And so we have a lot of fantastic lineup that's coming this year, including Ruta Cepedas, Holly Black, Haley Newsome, Randy Ribe, Ellen O, and the one I've been reading a lot of is Jeff Sentner. And so the 3 books that I read, 2 of them are YA, and The Wild Light, and Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee. And what I like about both of those books is like he does a really great job of writing about place, which is usually Tennessee, Kentucky, the South, and kind of the dynamic between really loving the place and its people, but also wanting new opportunities and things outside of it too, and kind of the tension between those 2 things. And both of those books really explore friendships in different ways. So in The Wild Light, you have 2 friends who are moving from Tennessee to a boarding school and kind of exploring how that changes their friendship dynamic. And Rain and Delilah is a little bit more of a humorous book and is about 2 teens who have a horror public access show. And now it's towards the end of their senior year, which probably also means the end of their show, and how are they going to navigate those things. And so because of enjoying those 2 books, I also picked up Zentner's adult debut, Colton Gentry's Third Act, which is about a country singer who goes viral for a rant that ends up kind of derailing his career, and so he's starting over in his hometown. And all of those are very lovely. I love his writing, and so I'm very excited to see him come to MCPL.
Awesome. Andrew, I saw the books you were going to recommend, and I'm so excited because I love these books.
Okay, and I feel like you did mention them maybe once before when we all talked, but I've now read them both, so now I want to talk about them.
That is how this series works, by the way.
Yes. Yes.
So it is the Monk and Robot series, which currently there are only 2 of the books in the series. The first one is the Psalm for the Wild Built, and the second one is a prayer for the crown shy, which I didn't know what crown shy meant. So I thought it was really interesting when I read it. And then afterwards I Googled it to make sure it was a real thing. And it was.
So what is it? You have to fill us in.
When trees are growing up in a forest, when you look up at the branches, they don't intertwine. They leave like a little gap. So when you look up, you can see a line of sky between the trees.
That's how you get happy little trees for Bob Ross.
Exactly.
They're crown shy at the top.
Yes.
Go ahead.
But anyway, so yeah, the Monk and Robot series is essentially about a monk who is not satisfied with what they're doing in life, so they decide to switch careers essentially and become a tea monk, where they go visit different towns and serve tea and listen to people's problems. And while doing that, I guess I should mention, this society, the robots became sentient at one point and they all fled society. So the society has not seen robots in hundreds of years. So while the monk is doing tea service, they just feel the urge to go wander into the wild, where they run into a robot. So it's the first human-robot interaction in hundreds of years. And so the 2 of them end up having a lot of interesting conversations about what it means to be human versus robot, what sentience means and what humanity means. And in the second book, the monk brings the robot back into the culture where the people are, and so it brings on even more questions where we have to sort of ruminate on humanity and what it means, and what we value and all of those sorts of things. And I thought it was just really fascinating. I called that cozy sci-fi, because I really enjoy cozy fantasy, but now I found cozy sci-fi. Basically, the cozier it is, the nicer. So.
Like a nice, gentle, like Hallmark sci-fi.
Yeah, I didn't know cozy sci-fi was a thing. I don't know if it is a thing, but I'm calling it.
Well, see, I also read the first book. I haven't gotten to the second one yet, which is why I didn't know what crown shy was, based on Scott's recommendation. And I am 2 and all 4 more cozy sci-fi. It reminded me of another book that I read almost at the same time called Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino, which is about a woman from another planet who is activated and communicates with her home planet via fax machine, and also is kind of figuring out, like, reporting back on what humanity is. And so it had very similar themes to it as well.
And I thought it was really funny because when I read the first in the Monk and Robot series, I was also reading a book you recommended, The Murderbot Diaries. And so listening to these 2 sci-fi novels about robots, one being so cozy sci-fi and one being very much more traditional aliens, space, violence and war. Reading those 2 side by side is an experience. And so I'm looking forward to the second in the Murderbot series as well.
Yeah, so Mosscap in Psalm of the Wild Built, no murdering. He doesn't want to murder anyone. Murderbot, up in the air. So I'm going to talk very briefly about my third book, which is Outrage Machine by Tobias Rose Stockwell, which is a book I read for MCPL's Facing the Future series, where we're bringing in a bunch of authors to talk about AI and just how technology has shaped our world. This one is about the algorithms of social media and how they keep us online. And the way they do that is by creating outrage, by making us angry. Tobias Rose Stockwell came and talked. It was an amazing talk. He talked about some policies we could get put forward to help kind of guide social media going forward, some things that we could do that I've already implemented in my life. But I wanted to mention this because we do have another event coming up June 20th with Kashmir Hill. And the name of her book I love a lot. It's called Your Face Belongs to Us. And while I haven't started it, I assume it is about capturing our faces. There's AI everywhere these days, so assume it's some sort of thing about face capture or CCTV. And so I'm really excited about that and the next talk in the Facing the Future series. So that is it for our librarians' picks. Tell us what you're reading at booktalk@mymcpl.org.
Welcome back for our second segment, which is Ask a Librarian. And that's where we take questions that we've gotten from customers, where we talk about them here on the show to help you all learn about using the library. Now, the first question is, can you share book recommendations for children starting school? My child is extremely sensitive, and I want to work on making it a positive experience for her.
Great. I see you're looking at me because I'm the youth guy. So the first one, when we got this question, the first place I went to was We Don't Eat Our Classmates. Great advice, unless you're a T-Rex, and then very hard to follow. So Penelope goes to school. She is a T-Rex, and she's trying to learn the rules of the schools. She's nervous about making friends. She doesn't really understand what's going to happen. And so a lot of anxiety is happening within that. Spoiler alert, she does eat her classmates. Don't worry, she spits them out immediately, which leads to one of my favorite images in all of picture books, where her classmates are just covered in it's saliva because she has spit them out. But she learns her lesson when she is bitten by the class pet. So great first day of school, kind of understanding what happens when you go to recess and all of these different things. It's become a whole series. So great place to start for that. I know Angie and I talked today because We Don't Eat Our Classmates was one of the first places she went as well. But what else did you have for us?
Well, the other one that came immediately to mind, other than that one, which I will second for sure, and that is a fantastic illustration page. But the one I was looking at kind of approaches the first day of school from a different perspective. So it's School's First Day of School by Adam Rex, illustrated by Christian Robinson. And this one is about Frederick Douglass Elementary School, and it is the first day that the school is welcoming students for the first time. So we get the first day of school from the perspective of the school building. And, at first some reluctant kids enter the school and are like, I hate school. And he feels very bad. But eventually the day goes on and we have art class and we have recess and lunch and everything like that. And both the kids are settling into the school, but so is the school settling into having students. So I like that because it kind of flips the role around a little bit. The illustrations are also really great. Christian Robinson is an excellent illustrator. So yeah.
Love Adam Rex, love Christian Robinson. He is a great illustrator. Do you have any answers for us, Andrew?
No. But my suggestion would be, if you enjoy those two books, you could always use our online resource, Novelist, to look those up to find read-alikes, to find more books that would be similar.
Oh, how do you think I found my books? I use Novelist. So I have a few more. I know Angie has more. So the first is Pigeon Has to Go to School by Mo Willems. I think this is a good choice because the Pigeon books are wildly popular. Great one to put in front of kids because they already relate to that character, and so they'll be on board with reading the book. But Pigeon is worried about everything from heavy backpacks, which relatable, and math, and I think it's just a great place to start for your readers. And then there's May's Brave Day, which I think is a good answer to this question. May is nervous for her first day, but her mom, yay for moms, reassures her, and so she's ready to go to school, and on her way to school, the birds and the butterflies also are cheering her on, and so she's getting a lot of confidence as she's walking to school. I have one more, but I know Angie has another one as well.
Yeah, I do have one more. It is Butterflies on the First Day of School by Annie Silvestra. And this kind of takes the metaphor of like having butterflies in one's stomach when one is nervous for an experience, and it kind of brings that to life. So this child is anxious for first days of school. Her mother tells her, oh, it's just butterflies. And so as she goes about her day, and maybe she talks to her first friend, or she encounters her first like fun activity at school, and each time another butterfly comes out of her mouth, which kind of basically means there are fewer in her stomach, fewer anxieties, and fewer tensions. And then her interaction with one of her friends helps one of her friends have some butterflies escape too. So it's just kind of a fun metaphor and a take on that. And like, so you just have to get used to an experience for the nerves to go a little bit away.
Great. And my last one is Ready for Kindergarten. So being nervous for school is a common feeling. So this goes through a bunch of different kids with a bunch of different issues with starting school. So it's an inspiring book. And I'm going to let the publisher speak because they said it's perfect for easing nerves and increasing excitement. So that's Ready for Kindergarten.
Well, awesome. You all have some great recommendations to help that customer. Now, our second question hits on one of my favorite topics, which is movies based on books. So the next question is, do you all have any movie suggestions that will encourage you to pick up the book? So, Angie, have you seen any movies that have encouraged you to pick up the book?
No, because I generally always like to read the book first, which means oftentimes that I don't get around to either reading the book or watching the movie that I want to watch. So I'm going to talk instead about some books that I recently read that I was inspired to pick up because I know there's an adaptation I want to watch. So I'm cheating just a little bit, so I hope you'll indulge me. So the first one is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, which is a new series on Netflix. This is a science fiction series. It's about an alien first contact situation, but there's also a virtual reality game that brings in some figures from history. It's all about basically what happens when this potential alien civilization wants to disrupt science on our planet as a potential problem. And so it's really fascinating. I'm a kind of person who likes science fiction for ideas and not action, and this one is a very kind of philosophical idea-heavy series. And so I read the first book in the trilogy, so now I'm anxiously awaiting the second and the third, so then I can then go on to watch the show.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, I'm partway through The Three-Body Problem, and it's really fascinating so far. So I guess that one is for me too, because I've already put the book on hold, even though I haven't finished the TV series. Scott, how about you?
Yeah, so the first one I put on here was Howl's Moving Castle. which is one of my favorite animes. Hayao Miyazaki, who is amazingly popular in making anime. Probably, if you ask people like their favorite movies, Hayao Miyazaki is a go-to for them. And I just love the fantasy of this. The castle that exists that's moving along is just so strange and weird, and that's what I like about it. It's strange and weird. So there's a book by Diane Wynne Jones, and I just am wondering, because the first is so visual and animated, and the book is a novel. It's not based on a graphic novel, a comic book, or a manga. And so I just want to see like how the words move me, and then go back to the movie and be like, totally got it right, or oh, this vision is really cool for how they chose to do this moving castle. So that's one I would like to visit.
Okay, awesome. I mean, some of the ones I would have had would have been things I would have seen when I was too young to really have known or cared to read the books, like the Anne of Green Gables or The Neverending Story, or Stardust. Those are all movies that have been fascinating, and ones that I either should or have gone to read since then. Angie, did you have any more that you wanted to share?
Actually, this one I hadn't thought of, but this is one I actually did see the movie first, and now I do want to read the books because there's also another adaptation, The Talented Mr. Ripley, which was a movie way back when with Matt Damon, and now they're doing a new adaptation of it. But the books are originally written by Patricia Highsmith, who always does that very kind of weird, creepy, ominous, awful people vibe that I'm often into. So I do want to go back and revisit the books maybe before seeing this new adaptation.
Okay, yeah, I saw that there was another adaptation out there, so I'm trying to find the book to read. But anyway, Scott, did you have more?
I did.
Yeah.
So the other one was Red, White, and Royal Blue, which came out on Amazon last year. Very cute romance, president's son and a prince. Are enemies to lovers, essentially. It's a very cute romance. I loved the movie, and so want to read the book, minus a very specific scene. We were talking beforehand of would this raise your anxiety, and there is a scene very early on where they are at a wedding, and there's this beautiful, gigantic wedding cake, and they are arguing in front of it, and astute readers, watchers, will know what happens with that wedding cake. Scott hated what happened with that wedding cake because that is the prince's sister's special day, and that was just too much for my anxiety. But it didn't really affect these two.
I love that you're all okay with like the gore in your horror books, but like it's just the wedding cake potentially being demolished that you're like, no, that's too far, too far.
Kill someone at a summer camp, fine. Knock over a wedding cake.
Now, I will say, I really liked the Red, White, and Royal Blue movie, but I do think the book was better.
Ooh,
so
love that.
Yes.
See, I read the book, but I haven't seen the adaptation, so.
So it's a good adaptation, just the book is still better. So one other thing I wanted to mention, they're not movies, but actually, since I'm a theater person, some new Broadway musicals that are out this year and nominated for Tonys are all based on books. I think I've actually read, I've read all of them. They're just very long ago reads. So there's a new adaptation of The Great Gatsby that's on Broadway right now, as well as Water for Elephants. If you've seen, that's actually a book and a movie I would also recommend from, goodness, probably 10 to 15 years ago. And then The Outsiders has a new musical adaptation that's been nominated for some Tonys. So, and again, The Outsiders also has a movie and the book. So I think all three of those, you should read the book and then watch the movie and then see the musical, because, or maybe I'm the only one who does that.
Why not? Just get all of it that you can. Maybe they'll release a TV show.
Exactly.
There'll be an anime. There'll be
Graphic novels. I know there's at least a Great Gatsby one, so.
So yeah, so anyway, that was great recommendations, y'all. Now, we do have one more question, but I don't know what it is.
Neither do we.
You're
So
a little
before
nervous about
I
this.
read, does somebody want to volunteer to answer first?
See if it's wedding cake anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, if you could meet any author, dead or alive, who would it be and why? And what book do you think I should start with? So I'll give you a second to think about that. I'll think about that too, I don't know. Actually, okay, no, I do. And anyone who knows me will laugh because it amuses me. The person I would meet, the author I would meet, is Dr. Chuck Tingle, who you may know from writing some strange horror and romance books. But as strange as the Tingleverse is, I find it endearing. And he is a writer who he is autistic, and when he does book talks or anything, he does wear a mask, so his identity is completely hidden. And I just think he's created a little massive, crazy universe of his own, primarily self-published at first. And I think he's a fascinating character. And I would start, he actually has a horror novel that is just out this last year called Camp Damascus that I would start with. It's another, I guess you could argue, maybe not summer camp, but a camp horror novel of sorts. Okay, have either of you thought of an answer?
One, Camp Damascus is on my to-be-read list because of that. Yeah, I think I'd meet, I was like, Becky Chambers, but I've only read the 2 books of the, that's the Psalm for the Wild Built, the Monk and Robot. But I think more than that would be Shanann McGuire, who writes a ton of great books, under different names as well. So she wrote, I think they're called, she wrote Feedback as Mira Grant, but the Chimera series, which I love, which is kind of like biochemical zombie horror sci-fi, which is really good. But the series that I really love is her Wayward Children series, which is about these kids who go through or fall through doorways that take them to worlds. They have all come back to Earth, and they often have a hard time reassimilating to society because sometimes they've spent 30, 40 years in these different worlds and come back and it's been like a day and a half. And their parents were worried, but they're like, you were barely gone. But they spent a vast majority of their time. I think they're an amazing writer, and I'd love to meet them.
I also really like the Wayward Children series, and also whatever the series is that begins with middle game. So that's a fantastic. I might want to tag along if you want to invite me to whatever your dinner party situation is.
Always.
Yeah. But I was trying to think of this and like so many answers. I've been lucky to be able to go to several author events like Hanif of Cherokee for many of my favorite authors, but one I'm still missing, still hasn't come to the area, is Elizabeth McCracken. When I first read her book, The Giant's House, which I sometimes blame or credit, I guess, I don't know which term is more appropriate, for me becoming a librarian, because it has some very lovely scenes about libraries and librarianship, and it's also kind of an interesting story about outsiders and loneliness. So that was a very important book to me at a certain point in my life, and so I think I might choose that one.
I think those are great answers. Now I have even more authors to look into and read. Well, if you have any more questions that you'd like us to answer, you're always welcome to email us at booktalk@mymcpl.org. Thank you.
All right, well, now it is time for our final segment, the Librarian's Choice segment, where we share some things that are happening in the library coming up soon that may tie into some books or programs or services that we're excited to talk about. I know we're gearing up for summer, which is a really important time at the library, and I think, Scott, you have some more to talk about with that.
That is right. I want to talk about summer at MCPL. Hopefully we can get that in the shot. It's summer at MCPL.
And this year's theme is Telling Tales, where we all get to read, share, and enjoy the amazing stories that we all have.
Designed for folks of all ages, the Summer at MCPL Library program is filled with exciting activities, engaging in-branch programs, and of course, tons of great books.
From June 1st to August 24th, MCPL encourages daily 20-minute readings or coming and seeing any one of our wonderful and exciting programs during the summer, like Storytime.
Are you a reader under the age of 20? Then read 20 minutes a day for 20, 40, and 60 days. Then come into your local branch to earn an amazing prize book.
Use this awesome reading log to track your progress. Readers in Beanstack are eligible to win a variety of wonderful family experiences from our great community partners. Adults age 20 and up are also eligible for prizes as well. After 60 days, you will receive a free Telling Tales limited edition glass.
So mark your calendars for the Summer at MCPL program, Telling Tales.
All right. Well, Andrew, what are you excited about coming?
Well, I was going to talk about August, which is Read a Romance Month. And I do read a decent amount of romance, just because it's like fantasy, but with romance. Anyway, MCPL also in August does the annual Romance Genrecon, which is a 2-day conference where they bring in romance authors and they do workshops and they do author talks and all sorts of neat stuff. So you can find more information about that on our website, which would just go to the website and you can search Romance Genrecon, or it's mymcpl.org/romance. Another thing I was going to say about romance is the MCPL staff create a lot of lists over the years of different things, but sometimes it's hard to know exactly how to find them when you want them. So I was going to tell you, if you go to our online catalog and you're just like, I want to see what the librarians have created, you can search, for example, the term romance, and where it says normally keyword, which is the default, the best search generally, you can change that to lists, and you can just search lists that have been created in our online catalog. So you can find all the lists our staff have made, and if you search romance in lists, then you'll see all sorts of lists our staff have made over the years on romance novels, and that just gives you, I think, a wider variety of librarian recommended titles.
You can also do that with the Summer Library program. Summer at MCPL, look for Telling Tales, or just horror. So you can get lists by me. I've only made like 1 or 2 horror lists.
Well, I'm curious, Andrew, then do you have a particular romance you would recommend if I wanted to read one for Read a Romance Month?
You know, oh, you're going to make me open up my Goodreads account. The one that comes to mind is actually, it may be a little light on romance, but I would consider it a romantasy, is The Legends and Lattes. Did you read that?
I have not.
Okay, it is.
But I hear it has that cozy fantasy vibes we were talking about
It really
earlier.
is, because, you know, there's orcs and there's elves, but nobody's like at war. She's an orc who wants to open a coffee shop. And so that's I think why it falls into the cozy genre, because there's no sort of like, when you think of, you know, like epic battles, it's very everyday, just with fantasy characters. And so it's a very sweet, cozy, romantic fantasy.
Okay. All right. Well, before we hit August, we hit June, which is Audiobook Appreciation Month. And I know we've talked about audiobooks many times in our program, but I don't think we've devoted an entire segment to audiobooks. And so I know both of you listen on occasion. So I'm just curious, do you guys have any favorite audiobooks or audiobook narrators you want to share?
I mean, I do
Or
have-
why you like to listen to audiobooks as a format?
I mean, I do like audiobooks mostly because I do spend a lot of time in the car, and it's just a convenient way to continue reading while in the car. And I do have a go-to narrator where I will just go to the Libby app and I will search her name, or more likely I'll search a book that she's, you know, that I know she's read and tap her name. And that's Bonnie Turpin. And I remember reading, one of the first books I read with her was the Dread Nation series, or duology, which was a really good horror, historical fiction horror, if you haven't read that. It's Civil War zombies. But she also read, in the horror, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. But she reads more than horror. Anyway, she is my go-to, the one I enjoy listening. But I also think it's funny, even when you don't know a narrator's name, you start a book and then you have to go back and look their name up because it's like, I know you. Why do I know you? Which other stories did you tell me? And I always think that's a fun thing about audiobooks.
Yeah, I love her too. Our producer is going to have to find the title of this book, but she read a book that is about a woman in India who everyone thinks she murdered her husband. And so do you know the title of it?
It's The Bandit Queen.
The Bandit Queens.
I don't know the author though, but yes.
So the Bandit Queen. So everyone thinks that she murdered her husband. And now everyone is coming to her for advice on murdering their own husbands. And so it's just this great, and she did not murder her husband. Also, he was terrible.
Spoilers.
No. She talks about it like right away. She's like, listen, I wish people would stop coming to me as the person who murders husbands. So it's a lot of fun. So that was The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. So good. She's a great author. I actually found that one, there is an award that Angie told me about that's like the Golden
Voices?
The Golden Voices Award, and it's given to audiobook narrators. It's a great place to find if you are looking for a good audiobook, you aren't necessarily sure what you want to read, but you want someone who's good at reading it. That's a great place to go. I love full casts, so The Weight of Blood, which I already mentioned. Also things that do podcasts, so Sadie by Courtney Summers is another one I love, and that is about a girl who is hosting a podcast about her murdered sister, and the whole concept of the podcast is she's trying to find the killer. And so she is following her sister's last steps. And Courtney Summers is great, very dark oftentimes, and Sadie is no exception. So that's a really good audiobook that I would recommend.
So I read the book of that one, and that would make a really great audiobook because of that podcast situation. So now I kind of have FOMO and wish I'd listened to it that way. I also like Bonnie Turpin too. She's another of my go-to narrators. But another one is Marin Ireland. I will listen to anything. She's also someone I look up her name in the catalog just to see what she has narrated. She does the Beartown trilogy by Frederick Bachman. And those are massive books, but I didn't mind because I got to spend it in the company of her excellent narration. She also does Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, another one of my favorites as well. But I'm also like you, Scott, in that a full cast audiobook also just adds that extra performance to an audiobook too.
Something I love for full cast, if you especially like short fiction, is if you go and you just search LA Theater Works, they put out a lot of audio versions of plays. And so again, you're getting a story in about 2 hours or so with a full cast, full professional cast production. And something else I was going to mention, because I think I mentioned it before we started filming, about audiobooks, is the audiobooks that have additional sound effects. Like I had mentioned to you, the Raptor Red, where the main character is a raptor, and so you also get noises and different sounds as the raptor is living her life. So books with sound effects, I do love those as well.
There's a series called Movies of the Mind or something like that, where it's a lot of like comic books that they have turned into kind of full cast things with sound effects and all of that kind of thing. So we have a few of those. Graphic novels are making like a huge push into the world of audiobooks, and so I think that's kind of going to be my next rabbit hole to go down in audiobook form, is graphic novels that have been turned into audiobooks.
Yeah, you're mentioning the sound effects brought me to another one that I know a question we commonly get at the library are audiobooks that the whole family can listen to, because people like to do that like on a road trip or whatever, family vacation, and we're hitting that time of year. And one I particularly recommend is Stunt Boy in the Meantime, because that definitely brings in lots of audiobooks and sound effects and voices, and it really kind of brings that novel to life, and I think it would definitely keep kids' attention too.
Yeah, and that won the Odyssey Award, which is an audiobook award, and they played a moment from it, and it's like a director that's like, quiet on the set, and then it goes into Stunt Boy talking about whatever is going to happen next, so.
Yeah, there's like, the character has anxiety at certain moments, and so you get like that horn honking in the background when that comes up, and it just really kind of adds to the feel of the book for sure. Cool. Well, as you can see, this is one of our favorite topics, so you might hear about that in later episodes. But this wraps up our edition of Readers Lounge Live. As mentioned earlier, if you have any questions or if you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear it at booktalk@mymcpl.org. We do this once a quarter, so we look forward to seeing you next time.